How's it going? Welcome, folks, to a primer video. I am making this video to kind of give a state of the game in terms of meta, popular decks for each clan, where each clan stands in terms of power, and kind of how to get into playing this game competitively. There was some questions from the Thrones community, or at least people that I know in the Thrones community, about kind of getting into the game, and I am no problem. I have no problem with kind of shilling to get more people to play this game. So first thing I'm gonna do. So this is gonna be from the perspective of people getting into the game who are already kind of into competitive card games or are familiar with Fantasy Flight's LCG model. So there might be some things for like brand new people that you might not get. So just bear with me. The first thing I'm gonna mention is if you're looking to get into this game, go to the L5R LCG trade group on Facebook, and there's just collections. There's just like multiple sets of collections being sold, and this is the best way to actually buy into the game as opposed to buying everything retail. Like, I know you want to support your stores and everything, but this is just way cheaper, and it basically recycles a used collection, and it's the easiest way to get just a full collection. So I would always check out here before kind of diving in. You can get a deal much cheaper than retail. The second thing I'm gonna mention is the online platform, similar to the IronThrone.net. We have Jigoku.online, which is very similar to how Iron Throne is set up. You just kind of can play games, and the cards are all there. You can spectate games. You can make private games. Everything is there. So this just lets you kind of play the game in a way that either lets you try the game out without having to buy in immediately, or if you just don't have a local scene and you do want to start playing and practicing, this is definitely the best way. I would highly suggest checking this out. So, without further ado, I'm gonna move on to the decks. So some of these decks are decks that I have built myself, or I have gathered from prominent members of the community. So I'll, if the deck is not from me, I will let people know who made the deck. It's really good resources. There's a lot of Facebook groups and the Discord server. Oh, the other thing I'll mention is the Discord server. The actual Discord server for for L5R, I'll put in the video description. Yeah, thanks, Nix. Um, and I will move into put all the extra links into the video description. So the Discord server, the Facebook group, the um, Bushi Builder. So Bushi Builder is what pretty much everyone uses for building decks, unless you're a heathen, like my friend Eric here, who uses 5 rings. Um, and then you have uh, Jigoku, the Discord server, the Facebook groups. So starting out, just gonna go in alphabetical order, and then I'll kind of talk about where I see them in terms of power. We have the current Crab deck. This is what you should expect to see out of Crab at the moment. It is definitely the most consistent and powerful deck that they have. It is a really cool engine building deck. So in AGOT, I guess the closest uh, kind of deck you compare it to is maybe Start Crossing. So in L5R, we recently got a card called Those Who Serve, which is passing the bot gate for those who know what that card does. And it basically allows you to just spit out bodies. Unlike AGOT though, in L5R, Crab has access to a just global force pump, which gives all of your characters extra strength for the whole challenge phase. It's really insane. And this basically allows you to, like, imagine if you could play 3 Bear Island Scouts and they were just 3-3. They were 3 strength instead of 1 strength. Like, that would just be so insane, right? So that's what Kuni Labs allows you to do. So the general gist of the deck is you're gonna play those who serve, and then you use cards like Unyielding Sensei, which with a holding allows you to, holdings are locations in this game. Um, with the holding, it lets you stack characters on it, so you can buy more than So normally you only flip 4 characters in a turn, but with cards like Unyielding Sensei and the Stronghold Kunihita, it allows you to see more than 3 characters, and it allows you to kind of cheat the resources that you would normally see to leverage passing the Black Gate. Those who serve. You also are the only clan in the game that has March to the Wall. So so when you play against Crab, you have to know. This is the first lesson a lot of players will learn, is they'll get the community calls it getting crabbed. If you just buy a big and then they march you, you die. So you basically always have to have a Chud protecting you. And unlike March, this can be used in any action window. So there's a lot of clever ways to get them marched off. So having only one clan having access to this card is really powerful, as opposed to it being a plot in AGOT. The other thing that they have is they have an event that lets them replace one of their locations. It just literally takes it from the discard pile and puts it into play. So you have these really powerful holdings that you might not want to keep around all the time, but you can always get them back, or if they get broken. And then basically the rest of the conflict deck is you have cancels, you have some staple cards, attachment control, and then it's just like a very generic, just stat efficient, card efficient cards in on the side of your deck. And then all your characters have they're part of your engine, so they're either really good abilities for low cost, or they have abilities when they leave play. So, or they draw you cards. They stand your characters. It's just kind of a deck that all fits together. So this would be a very synergistic. It's not a very hard deck to play, but if you want to maximize the deck, it definitely favors people who put in reps, and also helps. It just gives you a lot of decisions. Super flexible deck. So next deck. So this is the deck that we have. This is from Eric. I'm not gonna try and pronounce his last name. It's Eric Balhus, who is the Shogun from 2018. So he won the second Worlds playing Crane. So I piggybacked a Crane deck from him. This is currently what he is testing. If basically when people ask me if I was to play Crane, what would I play? I always respond with whatever Eric is testing. I don't know anything about the clan, but my friend Eric basically, yeah, I know Nix. I said not gonna try, and then immediately tried. Um, so the way Crane works, this is this is the second stronghold. So in L5R, your strongholds are similar, I guess, to they're equivalent to like agendas, basically, is how I would describe them. Or at least that's the closest you're gonna get. Like your stronghold plus your role, I guess, would equal your agenda in AGOT. And so this stronghold has to do with the dueling ability. And so after a duel resolves, you kneel your stronghold, and you get to choose a character that was involved in the duel. Sorry, a character you control, and you honor that character. So honored characters in L5R get a permanent stat increase, and when they leave play, they gain you an honor. So equivalent to, like, I guess, making it you're further away from losing. Okay, so there's 3 ways to lose the game / win the game. The first one is you break 3 of your opponent's provinces, and then you break their stronghold. That's the most common and most popular way to play the game at the moment, just because it's the most generic and every clan can kind of do it. The second most popular way you'll see is what's called dishonor, where there's not really an analogy in AGOT, but in Magic, for instance, honor is your life, and so if your honor ever reaches 0, you lose. And then the other way, I don't have a single deck in here that uses this method, but it is actually getting a little bit more reasonable to do. Is winning by getting to 25 life. If you get to 25 honor, you win the game immediately. So that victory condition is available to people. I personally don't think it is that good yet, and so I'm not covering it. So this is deck. So the previous deck I showed you, the crab deck, is trying to win via breaking all your opponent's provinces and stronghold, and it has the ability to pressure your opponent's honor. Um, So the couple ways to pressure honor in this game is, so when you draw cards, you get to choose how many cards you want to draw for the turn between 1 and 5. You, however, have to pay life to your opponent equal to the difference in your bids. So you could see decks that have ways to draw cards outside of the draw phase, kind of leverage that and lower their bids and kind of make choke the card pool. So the crab deck, for instance, has cards like Funeral Pyre and Shujusuki, Kaiju Envoy. All these cards draw you cards in some way, and so if you can get cards outside of the draw phase, you can start pressuring your opponent on honor. So this deck can win via dishonor. You generally do win via breaking your opponent's stronghold, though. So, the Crane deck, it can win. I think like every deck can win by dishonor. It's just not really the main game plan. This deck is really just trying to break your opponent's stronghold. Also, the core of this deck is it's leveraging duels with your stronghold. So you have cards like Policy Debate, which is the restricted choice for this deck. Rebuild was the restricted choice of the Crab deck. Um, Policy Debate is basically it's duress, like, or sorry, Thoughtseize. It's Thoughtseize. Um, a new card, Return the Offense, which keeps your character from kneeling. And then you have a suite of attachments, which kind of buff up your characters for the duels. And then you have just generic, cheap, efficient cards. And then Kraken is one of the two factions that have in faction cancels. So cancels in this game are way more powerful than they are in AGOT. They all cost 0, and they are just like super super powerful. Uh, like just costing 0 is a huge change. I don't know what this Masterpiece Painter card does. Eric's playing it though. Interesting. I don't know why Eric is playing this card. I guess it's a 3 cost 2/4. It's not bad. That could potentially draw you a card. Alright. He's probably trying it actually, because the deluxe box just came out actually. So this deck is basically just trying to honor its characters, leverage their stats, and duels with higher stats, and then break your opponent's provinces. You're basically trying to generate a snowball effect with this deck. It can win longer games, but generally speaking, other factions have better late games than you do. Crane at the moment is definitely struggling in terms of the meta position, but they still have strong things to do. Uh, I used to play Dragon, and I personally have not built a Dragon deck in a long time because the faction has just not gotten a lot of cards. The equivalent, I guess, would be Lannister and Aegot. Dragon was really powerful in the beginning of the game, and basically hasn't gotten that many playable cards since. So they're really struggling. This is a deck made by Alex Jacobs, who basically this is the brand new stronghold from the Dragon Deluxe box. It is basically leveraging the ability on this character Tagashimitsu, who basically lets you. He has built-in recursion. Everyone in AGOT knows how powerful recursion is, and he is trying to just leverage all of these powerful cards and kind of get an undying Mitsu. If you play 5 cards in a conflict, you can bow your stronghold to take a fate off of a ring and put it onto your character. And so if you do that enough times, your character will never leave. I've seen this deck play. It's actually a lot better than I thought it would be. I personally don't think it's that good still. It is, however, something to go on for Dragon at least, and so I will definitely allow if people want to try it. It's super fun to play. I'll definitely say that it's a super fun to play deck. It has a lot going on for it, but if you're looking for more of a combo kind of engine deck, I would play the Crab deck at the moment. It is a stronger deck, and you will win more games. Yeah. So I'll say real quick to touch on Dragon's themes. Dragon did before just kind of have like a kind of good stuff mentality. It wasn't really a big like a very cohesive theme. They just took all their best cards and put it in a deck. I really hate that term, good stuff, but it was just like a mid-range deck with like all the best cards that you had available to you. Because like reasonably, every deck should be a good stuff deck because you only want to play good cards, right? So this is one of the newer decks that has kind of taken the meta by storm at the moment. This is a pure Voltron deck, so this would be similar to I guess the Jontron decks in AGOT. you have the strategy is to buy any one of your characters with a commander trait. So that's Matsu Agatoki, Kitsumotso, or Akoto Zentaro. And then versus Scorpion, you buy Ichiro. And you basically load them up with every single attachment you can. Like Jontron, instead of using Queen's Guard, you have cards like Fan of Command and In Service to My Lord, which allows your character to stand and participate in multiple conflicts. And so you basically just load up one character, you move them into every conflict, you have them participate in every conflict, and then you leverage that with cards like Spyglass and Tactical Ingenuity, which allow you to draw cards. So Spyglass draws you a card every time a character moves to a conflict or declares. So and it's limited twice. So this card really snowballs out of control if you get multiples. And then Tactical Ingenuity lets you dig 4 deep in your deck for an event card, reveal it, and then add it to your hand. It's a 0 cost attachment. It's pretty ludicrous. Like some of these cards are actually like would be more broken in Thrones. They're just like they haven't even made it to Thrones. They're so broken. And then you're using stands and pumps to kind of move your characters in and win every conflict. That's basically what the Voltron deck is. It's literally Jontron, except you have more copies of John. You don't have to worry about just drawing one of your copies of John. You have 9 copies or 12 copies of John. So this is the current. There's 2 Phoenix decks actually I'm going to highlight. There's actually 2 different ways to play the clan right now, and so they're different enough that I'm going to cover them both. This is currently what has put up the most results in the couple events that we've had so far. You're using the old Stronghold from Phoenix, and you're basically leveraging the card Haughty Magistrate, which is the equivalent would be Core Balon. So instead of Strength, you use the stat called Glory, which I have. There's no AGOT equivalent, but it's the little 1 up in the middle of the card, and you use the Stronghold to pump that up to a 3. There's just a lot of clans don't have characters with a glory of 3 or greater, and so this character basically is Core Balon, and so it just blanks your opponent's characters, and so you're leveraging that, and you're leveraging your small characters plus the card Elegant Tessin, which stands a Chud. But when your chuds are like huge, they actually are really relevant. This deck is pretty teched to beat the Voltron decks right now, which are very prevalent in the meta. You have cards like Consume by 5 Fires, which I can't even think of an AGOT equivalent. This is basically a reset, except it's one-sided, unlike in AGOT. So it's basically a one-sided reset for your against your opponent. You have the card Togashi Kazuo, which was in the Crane deck, which is basically an anti-Voltron card. It steals fate off of your opponent's character. Pacifism is an anti-Voltron card. It's the equivalent of it's an icon stripper. Yeah, it strips icons, which is really powerful. It's actually more powerful in L5R than it is in Thrones, because there's less ways to cheat your characters. Because in AGOT, your character loses an icon, they can somehow, like, if you can get them into the challenge, they at least participate. In Alpha, where they can't even do that. Oops. So this is kind of the one strategy is using your chuds plus Elegant Tessin to stand them, and then kind of racing with Haughty Magistrate at the moment. This is one version of Phoenix. The other version of Phoenix is it is leveraging the second stronghold that Phoenix has, which gives them recursion out of the bat. It's like if your agenda had recursion. It allows you to discard. I guess the equivalent to AGOT would be the only event type that like I can think of off the top of my head is like a song. Like imagine if you had an agenda that said kneel your agenda to discard a song event to play a song event from your discard. Obviously, you could change that to whatever type of event you want. In this, it's spells. Specifically, there's events that have the word spell. So, Supernatural Storm, Trick of the Light, all these have the word spell. And so you just discard one to play another one. And so what this deck is doing is it is leveraging the card of Fushicho, and it's trying to get that in the discard pile, and you're basically you're cheating it into play, and then this resurrects another character. So this is just a huge. This deck is basically just trying to cheat resources at every turn. It's definitely a lot worse when your stronghold doesn't actually draw you a card anymore. It just trades a card for a card. Before you could just play it. But it got nerfed. Before you didn't have to discard the card, and it was a lot better. It was a lot better, obviously. So this is leveraging the Shugenja trait, which is, I guess, like this is like knights, right? Like you just have a bunch of knights in play, and then you play Supernatural Storm, which gives you a character strength equal to the number of knights in play, which would be Shugenjas. Um, and yeah, so this deck right now is currently there, but it'll be completely different once the next cycle starts. The next cycle has a lot of cards that change how this deck would be built, but this is kind of a strategy that's not going anywhere unless something happens with the restricted list. Uh, let's see here. I think my stream is going still. It's saying it's buffering right now for me. This is the next deck. It is the deck that just won the most recent tournament, played by my friend Chris Podorf. I have been playing it recently. It's a super, super strong Dishonor deck, and it allows you to basically the strategy for this deck is different than the other decks. So all the decks that I've showed you so far have the ability to dishonor your opponents as a secondary win condition, but the primary win condition is breaking their stronghold. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 decks I've showed you are trying to break stronghold. This deck here is the opposite. This deck is literally trying not to break you're trying not to break provinces. You're just trying to find a province that has a low impact effect and just sit there and attack it and not break it while you slowly whittle down your opponent's life. This deck is super, super popular. If you're going to play this game, you need to know how this deck works. You need to know how to play against it. You need to understand how it beats you and the cards in it. It's not going anywhere at the moment, and so this deck is super, super popular, super, super strong, and it plays the game on a completely different axis, which makes it even more powerful. Um, it's the equivalent if you play Magic would be Counterburn. You have a lot of cancels. You have cancels, and then you have a lot of interaction that kind of stymies your opponent, and then you finish them off with burn. And then the last clan, I don't really have to say much about it because currently Unicorn doesn't have a true deck. Unicorn does have another deck. I have just don't have an updated list for it. It uses their other stronghold, sorry, their second stronghold, which allows you to declare an additional challenge, by sacrificing one of your cavalry characters after you win or after you win a challenge with more characters than your opponent. And so that deck is basically at the moment is a swarm deck that is trying to just go. It's like a blitz deck. It's like a swarm blitz deck. Um, if people are interested in that deck, I can definitely grab one from somebody, and post it. But I just don't have a list, and I didn't ask for one because the Unicorn players I know just aren't working on it because it hasn't been good since Charge got banned. This deck, however, is basically the Lion deck where it's JonTron, except it's unfortunately worse. You do have a better Tron target, but again, you only have 3 of them. Um, and you lack the ability to. So every faction in this game can banner any other faction. Um, Unlike an AGOT where you have to take that as your agenda, you just get to banner another faction, which is pretty awesome, and really gives you a lot of deck building options. Um, Yeah, sure, sure. Groth pointing out that the other unicorn deck maybe be like crossing where it's like it's like a rush deck. Yeah, it's just a blitz deck. You're trying to go for multiple as many challenges as you can, and you're just trying to end the game as fast as possible. Um, and that's really all it is. I just don't have a list for it, so I'll try and grab one before I can. This is just the currently the best, what I think is the best unicorn deck if you do want to play unicorn. Um, at the moment, unfortunately for Unicorn, they're just a worse version of Lion. And so I don't know, like unless you are just like love the color purple, if you want to play the strategy and want to do better, I would suggest playing the Lion version. So these are the decks. Um, it's just like a very cursory rundown. I didn't even go through the way the game is played or anything like that. I'm just kind of giving people like an idea of how the decks play. So 6 of the factions are trying to break your opponent's stronghold, so that you're just trying to get to 15 power, and one deck is trying to basically, I don't know, like mill you out would be the, I guess, the equivalent in AGOT. It's playing the game on a different axis to win the game. It's kind of similar to like Drown God, where I guess no, it has more interaction than Drown God, but like it wins the game passively. You're you just kind of get chipped down. Maybe this is closer to like Martell, like kind of like a Martell control deck, where you just get chipped down and then eventually you just die to random chuds. That might be a better estimation, but this is the one deck that is different than all the other ones. So if you like to be different and like, you know, like if you like drawing cards, like canceling, like this faction is where to be. This faction is really powerful. All the other factions are actually really fun. I personally like playing all the factions in this game. I'm just not playing some of them right now because they're not that competitive. So, kind of talk about where the meta stands, in my opinion. I'm just gonna open a notepad here. Is I would put in, if we do it in tiers here, in order, I would put Scorpion as the current best deck, which would be the Dishonor deck. The reason I have Scorpion as the best deck is they play the game on a different level. They have a different axis. They have the ability to punish mistakes much harder than any other faction in the game, and so you just get huge advantages for free, basically. They have access to the best card draw in the game. They have access to the best cancels in the game. They have just some of the best tools to further their win condition, and at the like their way they play the game forces other factions to tech for them, but then those factions lose matchup percentage against the other factions because they're playing the game so differently. So I have Scorpion as the current best deck in tier one. Um, Not saying that they can't lose. They definitely have some matchups that are hard. The Voltron matchups are hard for Scorpion. They're not unwinnable, but they are definitely hard. And some of the Phoenix decks can be hard for Scorpion, depending on how the cards go. But when you're playing Scorpion, you have the ability to win all your matches. So regardless of something being unfavored or favored, you just have a lot of play to your faction, and so you can kind of always play out of it. The second best deck in my opinion is Crab. Um, Outside of Scorpion, think Crab is very strong against all the other decks. Unfortunately, they have a bad Scorpion matchup, which is the reason they are not the best deck. The Crab deck just kind of hemorrhages honor too much, and that kind of plays into what Scorpion is trying to do. But on the other hand, you do kind of beat everybody else at the same game plan. If everyone's trying to break provinces, you leverage, you know, bodies and stats more than anyone else because of access to cards like CUNY Laboratory, which is just an insane amount of stats that you get to put into play. Um, you just have positive matchups across the other board. You're also, once you learn to play the deck and against the Voltron decks, you definitely have, you know, March to the Wall is a huge trump against the Voltron decks, and so, you know, if the meta has a lot of Voltron decks and you know, they make a misstep, you always can just march them, or you could like chain multiple marches over the course of 2 turns and actually nail once the Voltron dies, they lose. So if you ever just kill it, you'll win the game. Which is why I think Crab is the second best deck. They have good matchups against all the other decks. The third best deck, in my opinion, still these are all tier one decks, right? So any tier one deck, sitting down, I would give you know, a strong chance to win the tournament if you showed up with a tier one deck. I think this, you know, if your goal is to win a tournament, show up with one of these 3 decks. These are the 3 decks that I think give you the best chance to win a tournament. They have the best matchups overall, and they have the most linear, powerful game plans that are consistent and powerful. So the Voltron deck, the Lion deck, is super linear. You pick a Voltron, you suit him up, you draw a million cards, you put him in every conflict, you win every conflict. Like that's and it does this very consistently. My friend Dan, this is my friend Dan Mui's deck. who won the LVO tournament, and the VODs are on my YouTube channel and my Twitch channel if you would like to see kind of how this deck plays out. It's very, very consistent, and it does the same thing. It's not the most brain burning deck to play, and if you don't enjoy Voltron playstyles, just don't play this deck. It's not really going to be for you. It's not the most exciting deck in the world to play, in my opinion, but it is very powerful, and if push came to shove, if I thought it was a good meta call, I would absolutely play it at a tournament. So moving into tier 2. Where is it? Tier 2. I have Phoenix as top of tier 2. Either version. I just think Phoenix as a clan has a lot of tools to beat the tier 1 decks. They just don't. They're just a little bit too fair about how they do it. And when I say fair, they're not cheating resources in a lot of ways. With their stronghold getting nerfed, um, they aren't really getting a huge advantage with the stronghold anymore. You just kind of are doing everything, and you have to work. So it sounds like petty that I'm rating them lower because you have to work harder to play these decks, but I value the decks that allow you to get free wins a lot more, and the other three decks just kind of have draws or the ability against if your opponent makes a mistake to capitalize and kind of just be in the driver's seat. Whereas Phoenix, you really do have to try the whole way through the game. Like I said, I think Phoenix can beat any of the other three decks in any of the tier 1 decks. But I just don't think they do it consistently enough to warrant a position in tier 1. And then I have Unicorn in tier 2 only because the Voltron strategy is so redundant and powerful that even a worse version of the tier 1 deck is still good enough to be in tier 2. Just the attachments in this game. It's actually funny because in AGOT right now, Valyrian Steel has taken over, where or like cohort. These attachment strategies, people know how powerful attachments are. They're actually even more powerful in L5R than they are in AGOT, which is pretty hilarious, but also true. And so that's why the Voltron strategies are so powerful. All right, so tier 3. So I personally don't think that I think there's okay. So here we go. I'll put Crane in tier 3, um, only because Crane is also playing the game in such a fair way, but they don't have a lot of tools that Phoenix does to combat the tier 1 decks. So the issue with Crane right now is they struggle versus the Voltron decks. They struggle versus Crab, and they struggle versus Scorpion. Like, you just can't if you can't beat the tier 1 decks like consistently, you just aren't going to have a successful tournament. And the metaing that's happening for the Voltron decks kind of splash damages against Crane. Crane is playing a large number of attachments for their strategy, and they're playing duels, which have to do with stats, and so it's hard to duel against towers or effectively duel against the towers early or impactful. You definitely can do it, and it's definitely available to you, but it's not as powerful as it used to be. Crane also just is playing the game a little bit too fair at the moment, in my opinion. You're definitely lacking a lot of ways to cheat resources or cheat um, kind of stats or power. You're not playing the game on a different axis, and so you're just kind of behind everyone else on what they're doing. The one saving grace for Crane is they do have an in-faction cancel, which is still insanely powerful, and basically the reason that I think that and the how synergistic their deck is with the duels is kind of keeping them afloat in terms of the ability to win. I actually think Crane has the capability to win a tournament. Maybe okay here. Crane's probably the bottom of tier 2 then, with the clan war cards. I'm gonna put them on the bottom of tier 2 actually. I do think they are firmly at the bottom of tier 2, but I think any faction and I would not be surprised if any of these 5 factions won a tournament. I would be surprised if Crane won. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities, but I'd be surprised. And then in tier 3, I have Dragon. I would be surprised, and I think it's it's really low on the realm of possibilities with Dragon to win a tournament. Dragon just are lacking a lot of things right now. They're lacking a cohesive theme. They're lacking power. They don't match up with the meta at the moment. They have just so many losing matchups to everything, and they're just really bad right now. And does make me sad. I was a Dragon player for a full year. I just don't think they are competitively viable at the moment. Um, I think most Dragon players also will tell you the same thing. It's not really just them trying to like throw smoke and mirrors. It's literally just Dragon is in a really rough spot. I would say Dragon has losing matchups against the other 6 clans. Maybe not Crane. I haven't played the matchup enough, but I think they are unfavored versus everybody, which gives you a huge amount of uphill battle. So if that's your style, if you want to play underdogs, like go for it. Dragon is your faction right now. If you just want to be the underdog, go for it. And that's kind of how the game has gone right now with the deluxe box. So Clan War just came out. It's a equivalent of a deluxe expansion for the game, and it's basically a melee box that also had cards that affected Joust for the AGOT players. So there is a multiplayer format in this. It is unfortunately not as robust as melee. I actually do like playing melee a lot, but maybe with the AGOT players if AGOT players join the game, like we'll get like some big support for the 2v2 format or Enlightenment or something, and make it even better. So this is kind of my shill, I guess, to come play L5R for the competitive AGOT players who just want tournaments. The last thing I'll go into is one, our lead developer is really hands-on in the game. He communicates with the community a lot, and also has a set schedule for our restricted list and ban list updates. The second thing is we actually got a ban list, unlike AGOT, which helped free a lot of cards off the restricted list. Um, and then the second thing is we have a lot more organized tournaments from OP at the moment because our game is currently still alive as it turns out. However, they own the IP, so we're definitely hoping as the community that this is going to last. I'm very from the signs that I have seen, the OP side of this game definitely has I guess shrunk a little bit, but I think that the support is definitely still there, and I would feel confident recommending anybody to still buy into the game. I think you'll still get your money's worth in terms of enjoyment and time commitment. And so the current schedule for tournaments is this at the moment. More tournaments are announcing soon in quotation marks. So the next U.S. tournament will be at Adepticon in Schaumburg, Illinois, in Chicago. I'll be at that tournament. So hopefully I can convince the Midwest players to come up to that tournament. The tournament is on Friday, March 5th? No, March 27th. Sorry, Friday, March 27th, and then day two will be March 28th if you make the cut. And I hope to see more AGOT players kind of maybe delve into this game. Um, I definitely think it has some big differences. The biggest difference I would say is that this game, your decisions mean a lot more, and you have a lot more control on variance. There's a lot less blowouts, and just I guess I lost on turn one kind of moments. A lot of people will still, it feels that way to them, but like if you learn to play from behind, it's very very easy to come back in this game. There's just so many decisions that get made that if you just make more right decisions than your opponent, you'll win most of your games. As long as you're playing a competitive faction. But I definitely like where the game is right now. It's being shepherded by the right people. It still has support. It just happens to be a really fun, interactive game with a really, really strong, awesome community. And this is kind of my pitch to get more of the AGOT players to kind of join in. And I know FFG has hurt you in the past, but from the community standpoint, I would just you know take what you had for Worlds and just keep it going basically. So that's my shill. I'll put all the links to the decks that I linked, the Kote series, Jigoku, um, the trade group, and the Discord all in the YouTube video. So thanks everyone for watching. I'll post this video as soon as it's done uploading to YouTube.